Good evening, you're watching London Live News at 6 with Helena Warrior. Coming up tonight, the Bank of England warns we may be heading for a recession as they announce another increase in interest rates, the biggest rise in 27 years. The author of hit book This Is Going to Hurt, Adam Kay, says the suicide rate among NHS staff is being ignored as he unveils the first national memorial to health workers. We'll have an update on London's weather in the next 10 minutes. Plus, we'll have an in-depth analysis of the London clubs in the Premier League ahead of the season start tomorrow as Crystal Palace welcome Arsenal to Selhurst Park. And one London author releases her addictive debut novel using her own relationship as her inspiration. First tonight, though, the Bank of England has raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point today in the biggest increase in the cost of borrowing for 27 years. They also warned the UK is heading into a recession this year, as it expects the economy to keep shrinking until the end of 2023, in what could be the longest downturn since the 2008 financial crisis. Well, it's the sixth consecutive hike from the bank since December and lifts its key lending rate from 1.25% to 1.75%. The move will mean an immediate increase in mortgage bills for millions of homeowners on tracker or variable mortgages that move in line with the rate. Well, it will also add around £62 to the monthly cost of a typical £250,000 London mortgage. Well, George Buckley, an economist at Nomura, gave us a bit more insight.
We don't think they need to go much more, but we do think that rates will have a two handle on them. They'll be above 2% over the course of the next few months, and certainly by the end of the year. So the idea behind raising interest rates to control inflation is that when the cost of money is higher, it will reduce demand in the system. And demand relative to supply is really what generates inflation. The problem is that a lot of what we're seeing now in terms of inflation is not driven by people demanding and buying too much stuff. It's largely due to a supply problem. And we've seen, for example, in the aftermath of COVID, in the aftermath of and during the war with Ukraine, we've seen huge supply problems, whether that be delivery of food or energy prices. So this is not necessarily something that central banks find it easy to contend with, because raising interest rates will have an impact on demand, but it's not demand which has been the problem. So I think it's very difficult for central banks to deal with supply shocks like this. And that's why raising interest rates will certainly do something to reduce the amount of demand in the system, but it's not really getting to the underlying problem. As Madame Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, said, when you raise interest rates, it probably isn't going to affect the price of a loaf of bread. That's being impacted by very different things at the moment.
Well, that was George Buckley there. The bank said inflation will hit 13.3% in October, the highest for more than 42 years, if regulator Ofgem hikes the price cap on energy bills. Now, Archie Battersby's life support was not withdrawn this morning after his family launched a High Court bid to move him from the Royal London Hospital into a hospice. It comes after the European Court of Human Rights refused an application from Archie's parents to delay any changes to his treatment, saying it would not interfere with the UK court's rulings. Well, Archie's mother, Holly Dance, said she wanted her son in a peaceful hospice to say goodbye, but doctors have warned there is a significant risk in moving him, with the trust saying the move would most likely hasten the premature deterioration the family wished to avoid. Well, the 12-year-old has been in a coma since he was found unconscious in April and is on life-sustaining support at the East London Hospital. UK Supreme Court judges have previously said they have a great sympathy with Archie's parents, but added there is no prospect of any meaningful recovery. A fourth man has been arrested in the disappearance of a student nurse from Essex. 24-year-old Awami Davies was last seen just after midnight in South London on Thursday, July the 7th. CCTV released shows her crossing Derby Road in West Croydon with a man. Investigators are appealing for the driver of a white van that pulled out as she crossed the road to come forward. Well, today the Met Police said a 22-year-old man had been arrested at an address in Croydon Croydon on suspicion of murder. Officers have already arrested 3 other men in their 20s and 30s, also on suspicion of murder. Detectives are appealing for any information still, and Awami's mother, Nicole Davies, said, "Every day we hope to hear the news that Awami is coming back to us, and your help might make it so." Now, London could face a hosepipe ban due to the extended period of warm and dry weather, Thames Water has warned. The supplier said demand had reached its highest levels for 25 years as a result of one of the driest starts to a year on record, and that underground water levels had now fallen below average for the first time this year. Well, yesterday, a hosepipe and sprinkler ban was imposed on Kent and Sussex by South East Water. A £1,000 fine is attached for rule breakers. Well, in opposition to that, emergency services were called to flooded streets in North London early this morning as a water main burst in Kilburn. Firefighters had to lay down sandbags in Willesden Lane to protect homes, stating the flooding affected several properties on roads nearby, including Cavendish and Mapesbury Road. Well, 2 homes flooded with a metre of water and 4 residents had to be evacuated. Thames Water said the engineers turned off the water flow at about 6 a.m, just over an hour after the brigade were called. Now, the author and creator of the BBC series This Is Going to Hurt, Adam Kay, has warned that suicides among NHS staff are being brushed under the carpet. Kay was a former junior doctor and was in West London today, unveiling the first national memorial to health workers as he helped plant a tribute tree at Ealing Hospital. Well, according to the Laura Hyde Foundation, more than 220 nurses attempted to end their lives during the first year of the COVID pandemic in 2020, which also saw a 550% rise in demand for mental health support from medical staff.
I think, sad to say, there's a culture in medicine that doesn't acknowledge well enough the mental well-being of the people who work there, and that starts in your first day at medical school and it ends in your last day as a consultant. And I think it needs to change from the ground up. Medical students need to be taught that there will be bad days, that doctors of every stage need to know where they can turn, and people in a senior role need to be looking out for their juniors. So there's a lot that can change, and it's been, particularly suicide, has been a huge taboo within medicine, and hopefully things like this can help to break that taboo by talking about it. A big theme of the TV show This Is Going to Hurt was the dark humour that doctors use in particular to cope with the bad days at work. And there is a role for humour in coping with these things, but ultimately it's not the most effective way to cope with things. If there was an open and honest discussion about how we're feeling, doctors wouldn't need to turn to dark humour, nor would they need to resort to dangerous coping mechanisms like alcohol and drugs, and hopefully wouldn't be in the position where healthcare professionals end up with feeling like there's no way out and taking their own lives.
There we are, that was Adam Kay there, the author of This Is Going to Hurt. Right, let's take a look at London's weather for you now. It's going to continue to be a warm and sunny evening, staying comfortable overnight with temperatures around 14 degrees. Tomorrow morning is more of the same, a sunny start to the day with temperatures reaching 24 degrees by mid-afternoon. Looking ahead to the weekend, Saturday is very sunny with highs of 25. A few more clouds creeping in on Sunday, but temperatures will stay in the mid-20s. Well, just before the break, let's take a look at sport in the capital. We've been looking at some of the key London clubs in the Premier League in profile throughout this week. We started with Mikel Arteta's Arsenal on Monday and had a look at Spurs yesterday, and today it's Chelsea's turn.
I feel that I was right when I looked at the last season, and at the parts of the game where we struggled, parts of the season where we struggled and how we struggled. And then, we got sanctioned, players left us, that some players are trying to leave us, and this is where it is. So we had urgent appeal for quality players, and a huge amount of quality players. We got 2 quality players in, there's no doubt, but we are not competitive like this, and unfortunately we could see it today.
Well, we'll have plenty more later on in the show as we talk through all the London clubs and what we can expect from them with our resident football expert, Doogie Critchley. Right, it's time for a break now, but when we come back, London Live's paper reviewer Matt Withers will be here with a roundup of the stories making headlines in the local papers. See you soon.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back onto some other main UK headlines affecting Londoners. Ofgem has confirmed that the energy price cap will be updated quarterly rather than every 6 months, also warning that households face a very challenging winter. The energy regulators said that updating the price cap more often would provide stability in the energy market and reduce the risk of energy companies going bust. Well, dozens of suppliers have gone bust in the past year alone, something that has added to customer bills. While staying with the effects of that, figures from councils suggest that around 600 people every day are joining growing waiting lists to be assessed for social care and support in England. Unprecedented numbers of people needing help at home, plus hospital patients and unpaid carers, are waiting months for assessments and vital care. Catherine is from the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services.
So it's actually coming up to 540,000 people waiting for care support or assessments now, or reviews. And that is an enormous number. It's been growing steadily over the last few months that we've been monitoring it. This is the cumulative impact of austerity, Brexit, the pandemic, which considerably made the situation worse, and now the cost of living rises, which are impacting particularly on people who need care and support, people who work in care and support, or for those of us who are family members supporting people. We're really fearful for this winter to come because we can see what's happening not just in hospitals and with ambulances, but because our members know what's happening to people who aren't getting their needs met at home. We know about carers who are having to give up work because they don't feel that they can leave their relatives or their friends without essential care and support. We know of carers who've gone beyond the point of exhaustion, trying to support people.
Ahead of the busy summer holiday season, the Defence Infrastructure Organisation is urging holidaymakers and locals to take extra care and check military firing and training times when accessing Ministry of Defence sites shared with the public, which includes a number of popular coastal locations. Well, to do this, on a beach in Devon, a giant artwork of a 100-metre-long military Chinook helicopter has been created to make the Respect the Range campaign's point.
This year we're specifically focusing on some of the key training areas and ranges which are on the coastline. The general public, to stay safe, needs to first of all go online to look at the range firing times. When they go onto a training area, they need to stay on the public footpaths and the public rights of way. They need to respect and observe the red flags, read the signs, don't climb the fences. And if you see any military debris on the ground, don't pick it up, don't touch it, just report it. This will enable you to stay safe, and you will know when and where to access our training areas and ranges. As our military starts to increase its training, it's really important that the public understands where and when it is safe to access our training areas and ranges, so they can stay safe and our military can train.
Right, time now for a look at what stories have been making headlines in the local papers. Joining us now is Matt Withers. Matt, thank you for being here. Let's start with this. Visitors to London Zoo were met with a very surprising display this week.
Yeah, this is an interesting piece of news, and you could question whether it is news, as it appears not to be new. This is a crocodile handbag that's been placed in one of the displays at the zoo to warn against illegal wildlife trade. Now, this has been shared on Twitter, showing the Siamese crocodile not in its normal habitat, but in the form of a crocodile skin handbag. And there's a plaque there warning visitors about illegal trading, saying this bag used to be found swimming slow-moving rivers and streams across Southeast Asia and Indonesia, and points out that over the last 75 years, more than 80% of these crocodiles have disappeared. So that this display is not new to the zoo, but it's only just been picked up on Twitter. Somebody's put this picture up, it's gone viral, as is the way these things work these days. It's picked up by the online news outlets and has really gained a lot of traction. So I suppose, is it news until it's viral on Twitter?
If it's not posted about on Twitter, it didn't happen. Well, I mean, it's very interesting, I imagine, to be raising awareness. What has ZSL said then?
What Ben Tapsley, who is the curator of reptiles and amphibians at the zoo, has said is, we made this exhibition to draw visitors' attention to the devastating impact the illegal wildlife trade is having on species around the world. They say that the zoo is working globally with governments and local communities to protect wildlife and support law enforcement. A lot of people on Twitter have got behind this. In fact, one person tweeted, "That's the kind of zoo I can get behind. No live caged animals, just the consequences of humans." Of course, the zoo still does have live animals. It's not just become a kind of bag shop.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on now. Let's take a look at this. So this is dockless bikes causing some anger.
Yeah, this is something that I think a lot of people watching will know all about. These are the dockless bikes that are getting dumped outside of people's homes, and this is specifically Westminster City Council. And it's calling for these rented bike companies to clear up their mess after being inundated with complaints from people about bikes being left outside their homes. The authorities have discarded bikes are blocking up pavements, especially near London Underground stations. And people will know all about this. And indeed, when I was looking at this yesterday and drawing up a list of local stories, I looked outside my window in Hackney and found a bike just dumped right outside our flats there.
Absolutely. They really are everywhere.
Yeah.
So people can just leave them anywhere. So have the government or bike companies said anything?
Well, this is interesting. The bike companies have said nothing. The main ones in Westminster are Human, Forest and Tier. They were contacted for comment but didn't say anything, as is the case usually with these stories. The Department for Transport said, "We work closely with all the cities that we operate in to ensure that we integrate our service in a responsible way with consideration to all city residents," which I think most people will hear that will have absolutely no idea what that means.
I suppose it's this toss-up of trying to get people to use bikes more, but in a responsible way.
Yeah, and that's what Paul de Moldenberg, who's Westminster's cabinet member for city management, says. He says, "We're really excited about the potential for new technology to help clean up our city. But on the other hand, they're inundated reports with these bikes blocking pathways, roads, and even emergency access points." So yeah, it is this trade-off between them being obviously environmentally very friendly, but also quite dangerous for some people.
Absolutely. Right, well, let's take a look at our third story then, which is Islington Council having some trouble over last year's census.
Yeah, this is really interesting, and this is not just affecting Islington. I think people right across the capital are going to find this quite an issue. So a lot of people weren't included in the 2021 census. According to the census, which was held in March last year, 216,000 people were usually resident in Islington, which is 30,000 fewer than what they would expect based on their own population estimates. And now they're joining Westminster and Camden councillors for what's called the Lost Londoners Count campaign. And what they think has happened here is this census took place during the third national lockdown. And so a lot of people weren't around. There were people like students who would have gone home between lockdowns. There were people from outside the UK who left and didn't necessarily come back, but have since come back. And of course, there were people who moved out to second homes in the country. Now, this is important because the figures that come out of the census decide a lot of things around how funding is allocated. So funding for local areas to pay for GPs, NHS services, transport links and council services is based on these census figures. And if they're clocking in at tens of thousands fewer people than are actually there, that's going to affect the amount of money that's coming in for them to spend.
So what are Islington Council, who have raised this issue, what are they asking for then?
What they want is for the numbers to be adjusted, really, so that they clock in more with what they know from their own population estimates. So what Islington Council says is, we're asking for a commitment that the census data is reviewed and adjusted before it's used as a basis to work out local funding or plan local services. And in fact, London Councils, which is a cross-party and capital-wide group, they estimate around £4 billion of government funding to London local authorities relies directly or indirectly on census population figures.
Right, so a big issue then. OK, well, let's take a look at our final story. A Conservative councillor is asking his constituents who the next PM should be. Not a bad idea, I think.
No, this is interesting because, of course, the new Prime Minister is being chosen, but only by Conservative Party members, which is a very narrow section of the population. I believe they don't make official the figures, but I think it's about 3% of the entire population will get a say in this. Now, David Taylor, who is a councillor for the Conservatives for St Edwards on Havering Havering Council. He can't decide which of Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss he wants. He said he backed one of the early contenders who's since dropped out. And because he can't choose between the two, he said both held prominent roles in Boris Johnson's government, both have track records in high office. And I've no idea whether he sees those two things as positives or negatives. But he's set up a part of his website so that anybody in Havering, regardless of what party they're a member of or a member of none, or who they vote for, and if they vote, he will take on board what they say and use his vote to reflect the wider population.
Well, as we said, not a bad idea. So if you are in Havering, do take a look at that. Matt Withers, thanks so much for joining us on London Live News. And of course, the next Prime Minister will be announced on September 5th. Right, that was Matt Withers there. You're watching London Live News with Helen Awadia. A reminder of our top story coming up after the break. Plus, we'll hear from Dougie Critchley from Football Daily with his analysis of the London clubs in the Premier League ahead of the season start tomorrow.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News, a reminder of some of the stories affecting Londoners today. The Bank of England has raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point today, in the biggest increase in the cost of borrowing for 27 years. They also warned the UK is heading into a recession this year, as it expects the economy to keep shrinking until the end of 2023 in what could be the longest downturn since the 2008 financial crisis. Well, it's the 6th consecutive hike from the bank since December and lifts its key lending rate from 1.25 to 1.75%. The move will mean an immediate increase in mortgage bills for millions of homeowners on tracker or variable mortgages that move in line with the rate. Well, it will also add around £62 to the monthly cost of a typical £250,000 London mortgage. Now, London could face a hosepipe ban due to the extended period of warm and dry weather, Thames Water has warned. The supplier said demand had reached its highest levels for 25 years as a result of one of the driest starts to a year on record, and that underground water levels had now fallen below average for the first time this year. Well, yesterday, a hosepipe and sprinkler ban was imposed on Kent and Sussex by South East Water. Right, back to the football now, and it's the start of the Premier League season tomorrow evening at Selhurst Park, with the London derby to kick us off as Crystal Palace welcome Arsenal. Well, this year sees the Premier League host more London-based clubs than ever before, after the promotion of Fulham and the likes of Brentford staying in the league. Well, here to give us a preview was Dougie Critchley from Football Daily, and he joined James.
Dougie, thank you for coming on today. We'll start this chat by talking about Arsenal as they are kicking off the whole campaign for us all on the Friday as they travel to Crystal Palace. Tell us a little bit about them. They've done okay in the transfer window. They've got a documentary coming out which will play later in the show. Tell us a little bit about what you think of their prospects.
Yeah, I think Arsenal fans will be really excited for the start of the new season. As you mentioned, they're going to be reminded of last season's disappointment where they finished 2 points behind rivals Spurs in 5th. But as you say, they've had a really great summer window. I think Gabriel Jesus has looked magnificent in pre-season. Zinchenko adds quality at left back and in central midfield where he wants to play the majority of his football. And Fabio Vieira has a really good reputation from his time in Portugal. So Arsenal are, can go into this summer, season feeling slightly more confident. I think they're up to £168 million in the last 2 summers. So Arteta is definitely under pressure, but he'll be looking for a result at Crystal Palace, a really difficult place to go, one of the most vociferous home supports in the Premier League. And last year, they obviously lost at Brentford on the opening day. So they'll be looking to pick up some points early doors because they do have a favourable run of fixtures.
Yeah. Well, Arsenal fans, they always have this thing, and it's impressive in many ways, that their fans do have kind of a short memory because at the start of each season they get a couple of players and then suddenly they think they're going to be world beaters all over again.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely describe them as one of the most emotional fan bases out there. They get very high, they get very low, particularly on social media, which isn't always the fairest representation of how true fans are really thinking. But yeah, as I say, they've got some great fixtures in the first 6 to 7 weeks, and they'll be looking to build up an early lead because the competition for 4th is so tight this year.
Well, one of their biggest rivals and one of the biggest rivals for that 4th spot is Spurs, of course. Antonio Conte kind of brought them back to life midway through last season, and now he's got a full campaign ahead of him with some fresh faces as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the expectations at Spurs haven't been this high for years, really since the Mauricio Pochettino heyday. And with good reason, to be fair. Antonio Conte's got an excellent record, obviously a Premier League title winner with Chelsea, improved Inter Milan by 9 points in his 2nd season, which was enough to win the title in Italy. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen with Spurs whatsoever, but he's certainly been backed in the market. I mean, I think there's 6 new signings have come in, and the headline makers from that is Richarlison, who was one of Everton's best players last year and has been for a number of years now. Yves Bissouma, who's looked like a Champions League level player for a number of years. Clément Lenglet, of course, as well, who did have a difficult spell at Barcelona, but has performed well in the past there as well. And even Perisic as well, who's that left wing back that knows Antonio Conte so well, who got 15 league goals and assists last year, which was 2nd in Europe for defenders. So it looks like Spurs are in great shape to potentially challenge for third, maybe even second this year. So I'm feeling very confident for Spurs this year, but it's going to be difficult with that Champions League schedule as well.
Yeah, and Harry Kane, obviously one of the world's best strikers, and he's pushing 29 now, and pushing 30 now, and he hasn't ever got a trophy in his life, and he's one of those players that everyone says, you know, someone like him needs to have a number of trophies under their belt by now. Could this finally be the year of a player like him to get that?
Absolutely. I think it's got to be honest. Levy has backed Conte. They've done all their business so early in the window, which is really rare for Spurs, of course, and they haven't won a trophy now since 2008. It's one of the longest running jokes in English football, and Spurs fans will be desperate. I don't think they'll really care about challenging for the Premier League, really care about challenging in the Champions League per se, but if they get an FA Cup or a Carabao Cup in their locker, they'll be absolutely delighted with how this season's panned out.
Yeah. Another one challenging for top four, it's Chelsea, of course. Thomas Tuchel's side, they signed Raheem Sterling, they lost Lukaku. It looks like they just might be sort of middling the same as what they did last year, challenging for sort of third, potentially second, or could they win it this year?
I think that would be a bit of a stretch, to be honest. I think it's been a really difficult summer at Chelsea, to be honest. It's been very up and down. They've been in the news constantly. They've lost their technical director in Petr Cech. Todd Bowley's come in as owner and sporting director, which is never really ideal, given the fact he didn't even know he'd sort of owned the club 6 months ago, let alone be conducting their transfer business. Marina Granovskaya, who's got a really well-established reputation for doing that transfer business, has left. And it's been chaotic. I think they've brought in good players, in, as you say, Sterling and Koulibaly. They look like they're signing Marc Cucurella from Brighton. Probably not the position they needed to strengthen most, but going into this season as it stands, I still think they look a little bit short of goals. Romelu Lukaku's obviously left. It didn't work out for him last season. Timo Werner's apparently close to an exit as well. And so big pressure on Kai Havertz going into his third season in English football. We've been waiting for him to explode for so long. And whilst Raheem Sterling can definitely deliver some on the goals front, they do look some way off Man City and Liverpool as it still stands. But luckily for them, there are still weeks to go in the window, so they can sign that centre-back depth they need, that midfielder they need, and definitely look at that front line too. So I would be a little bit nervous if I was a Chelsea fan. I'm expecting fourth for them this season.
Yeah. Let's talk about West Ham United. They are a club who did very well last year and the year before. They're punching above their weight slightly. They've managed to keep hold of Declan Rice, who's been touted as a future England captain. What do you make of their season? They've signed a couple of decent players. Could they be finally challenging for that sort of fifth, fourth spot potentially, or is the competition just too high?
I think it might be the latter, I'm afraid, James. I know they're your side, but yeah, Man United, who only finished 2 points ahead of them last year, but they've looked really good in pre-season under Erik ten Hag. That was their worst season in Premier League history, so you'd expect them to improve. But as you say, I do like West Ham's signings, although it's been a little bit unfortunate. Their centre-back, new signing, Naya Faged, has now got injured, and Gianluca Scamacca, you know, had a really well-established reputation in Serie A last year. I think he got 16 league goals, but he massively overperformed his expected goals. But thank goodness for him and the ability to bring him in, because that eases the burden on Mikel Antonio, who's played pretty much non-stop so far. And with the UEFA Conference League coming up this season for West Ham as well, they definitely needed to spread the workload amongst their forwards. So I'd expect anything in the top 10, I think, would be positive for West Ham. And again, like Spurs, maybe a cup run.
Well, that was Doogie Critchley there. Well, it's time for a final break now, but when we come back, we'll be sticking with football and seeing all the action from the premiere of the documentary giving unprecedented access to Arsenal's Premier League campaign.
He's very intense.
When I lose a duel, I'm upset.
I want the pressure.
When you lose the ball, you run.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather.
and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News, starting our final part with some literature and a chat with a debut novelist from the capital who's used her own failed marriage as her inspiration. We're narrated by the character Jay in the days, weeks and months after the marriage collapses, and interspersed with the departed wife's diary entries, Is This Love by Catherine Riley has been described as deeply unsettling and addictive. Well, James spoke with Catherine.
Would you recommend partners taking it on holiday when they go on holidays together?
That's a really good question. Hopefully I'm not adding to the divorce rates with this book. I don't think I would be. I think, it'd be great to have a partner read along and see, there's bits of the story that I think all of us can relate to. I'm sure all of us have behaved badly in relationships and at the end of relationships. And so, yeah, I quite like the idea of a couple reading and pointing out the bits that they, maybe experience together.
Yeah. Well, I read quick review, and it said it's a struggle to make a summer book about a marriage breaking down, a summer read. But to your credit, you managed to make it so compelling and authentic. How do you reckon you went about that? Because it can't all just be shade without any light, surely.
Exactly. So the story starts with, you meet these two characters, Jay and Jay's wife, and it begins with their love story, this kind of passionate coming together. And in fact, it is very sunny. You know, the kind of story is described as sun drenched. You know, everybody's smiling at them. All the kind of cliches of that mad love that that happens at the beginning, and then it quickly cracks appear, and then it becomes something much more dark and twisted. I think the pacing of the book is such that it pulls you along, and so if you're sitting by the pool, luckily this summer, then hopefully it's a read that you can delve into and can be immersed in that way.
What made you decide to want to pen this novel? Because it's quite raw, it's quite personal in many ways, isn't it?
It is. It is and it isn't. I wanted to write a story that had universal themes. So I've been married, I've been divorced. Many of us have. I think the stats are like 1 in 2. Maybe not that bleak, but anyway, the odds aren't that great on a marriage, going well. And whether you've been married or not, all of us have experienced love and heartbreak. And so I wanted to write about those really universal themes in a way that I hope is original and will make people kind of think and relate and have an experience as they're reading the book.
Did writing it kind of change the way you feel about your life and your past relationships and kind of give you a better perspective of everything? Like you're looking down on it with a bit of a clearer mindset. And does it make you feel more positive about love and marriage in general?
Yeah, the story has a happy ending of sorts, and I definitely wanted that moment of kind of resolution or even redemption for the character Jay, without, spoiler alert and all that. But I think that, I think writing, all writers would say that they're processing stuff when they're writing stories down. I would say that definitely was part of my process. I also wrote it in lockdown, so it was a very intense period of writing and literally not being able to leave the house. So I guess, you could say there was some catharsis in that process. Yeah.
How long did it take you to write then, if you did it during that lockdown period?
It took 6 months to write the first draft. Which looking back now is just a really mad time. I mean, it's a mad time for all of us. I literally couldn't leave the house. So I would write this kind of furious story for most of each day, and then my partner was here locked in with me, and I'd have like a 5-minute decompression moment where she'd be like, okay, just get that out, and then let's have some normal time where you're not immersed in this crazy story.
That's interesting. What does your partner think of it, having read it, I assume?
Yes, yeah, she's read it. She's very proud of me, which is very nice. I think she was quite taken aback by what I had produced. This is my first novel, so I've written 2 non-fiction textbooks, but this is obviously very, very different. So she was pleased with the result and pleased that this is happening.
She wasn't like, oh God, I hope this isn't going to happen to me, is it?
Which one am I? Yeah, no, it's okay.
Do you plan on sort of following this up with a lot more sort of fiction books going forward? Is this something that you've really found a passion for?
Absolutely. So in my other job, I run a festival, Prima Donna Festival, which is a book festival. And actually being among writers and publishers and agents and having that access to talent kind of gave me the audacity to write my own book, because that's what Prima Donna is all about. It's about platforming people that are emerging into this mad industry. I've got the bug 100%. So I'm already working on book number 2, which again is a little bit, it's about toxic female friendships. So I've obviously hit a groove with that. But yeah, I'm hooked for sure.
There we are. Is This Love by C.E. Riley is out today. Now, ahead of kicking off the new season tomorrow night, Arsenal are the latest subject of Amazon Prime's All or Nothing series. The documentary looks behind the curtain during the Gunners' 2021-22 Premier League campaign, offering unprecedented coverage of Mikel Arteta and his team. Well, the premiere took place the other night, but first, let's see the trailer.
One is commitment.
and the other is passion. He's very intense.
When I lose a duel, I'm upset.
I want the pressure.
When you lose the ball, you run.
I feel like it's so important that the fans actually see what it's like for us, you know, off the pitch as well. They only get to come and see us at games. So I think it would just be a good documentary for them to see what we're like. And yeah, as players as well, we're really excited to watch it as well.
Heading into the new season, you're all fit and ready to go?
I'm not fit yet, I'm getting there. But yeah, I should be there soon, so yeah.
Frustrating, I imagine, at this
Yeah, it's frustrating, but these things happen, you know. Just going to stay positive and yeah, but I'll be back soon.
And then just finally, we asked Ben as well, the Lionesses on Sunday, it's shown what football means to this country, both for men and women. How much more hungry does it almost give an England player now to want to go and win something for the men's team?
Yeah, of course. You know, it's a big achievement for them and, you know, for the country as well. But yeah, in general, it just means so much to play for your country. So yeah, I guess it will make us more hungry, and obviously the men's, we wanna do that as well, you know. So yeah.
We have decided as a club that he's no longer our captain.
Wow. All in, all or nothing.
We have a young team, and I don't know if they're going to handle the pressure.
You have to be really unhappy to take someone off in the first half.
All in, all or nothing, rolling dice.
It's the worst Arsenal team I've ever seen in my life.
Everybody's losing it.
Don't worry, guys, I take the blame.
You wouldn't see too many cameras around, and it was quite yeah, it wasn't noticeable, and I think you'll see that with all our actions, and that's how we are day to day.
We see Mikel put some interesting steps in to try and get you guys ready for games with we see the rubbing hands bit, and we also see the putting the speakers ahead of you going to Anfield. What is it like having a manager who does think outside the box, things like that, and does it help you guys?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, the manager thinks of every single detail that could possibly benefit us, and you know, every little bit of help you can get on a Saturday is massively important.
That first episode, we go to the Brentford game from last season, which obviously for you was a bit of a baptism of fire in the Arsenal team. How important is it that this weekend is different to that?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, it wasn't a great game for me, and you know, I think I learned a lot from that game. And you know, this season's a completely different season. I mean, it's going to happen again, or yeah, no, we're all just focused on what we have to do.
I don't actually know what we've just done. What have we done, girls? I don't know. But yeah, maybe change and change at the best times, yeah.
We saw the women on Sunday. You guys got close last year. How much does that almost add a hunger after you see how the country's reacted to them winning when you go to Qatar in a few months?
Yeah, I think playing for England is obviously a massive achievement and a joy to play. And you know, when you put on that shirt, you want to win every game, and I think that's what everyone wants to do.
Who do you think will be the star out of the players? Who do you think is going to be the star of this afterwards?
God knows. I think everyone could have potential to do that.
To feel that we trust them, we have confidence in them, and whatever happens, we're going to defend them.
Sorry, it's an outside. I get mad at you, and I want you to be the best.
It's going to see one side of Mikel, which you guys are going to appreciate a lot. The passion, how he's committed for the club, how he's committed for his role. So and that's why we make the decision to open it to you guys to see how much he's working, how much he's giving to the club, and he's already one very special manager. I have just in front of me the squad because I dream of the squad. Every day I sit in my chair there, I'm sitting there, I'm just working myself and how can we improve, how can we better as a squad. So. But this season, yes, of course. The intention is to be every season better in all sense, in terms of squad balance, in terms of quality of the players, in terms of almost everything. So I think so far we're doing quite well, and I hope we finish the transfer season the way we planned it.
Back to it, acrobatics, back to flip, perseverance, never quit, all or nothing, and we're in.
We're falling in love with the club again.
What brings me here is hope.
Take a dive and you might find you have to sink before you swim.
What is more important, guys? The journey or the destination? You know what we have to really care about? The company.
So gather up all of your arsenal and fight with all your heart, and you will see that what you're fighting for is always right inside of you.
There we are, that's out now on Prime. Well, let's just take a final check on the weather now. It's going to continue to be a warm and sunny evening, staying comfortable overnight with temperatures around 14 degrees. Tomorrow morning is more of the same, a sunny start to the day with temperatures reaching 24 degrees by mid-afternoon. We're looking ahead to the weekend. Saturday is very sunny with highs of 25. A few more clouds creeping in on Sunday, but temperatures will stay in the mid-20s. Well, that's all from us this evening. For updates throughout the day, do head over to our social channels. You can find us in all the usual places at London Live. But now, from all of us here, have a lovely evening, and I'll see you tomorrow at 6 o'clock.